Great. So, welcome to week 8 um, of English 204. I hope you're not as overwhelmed as usually students are this time of the semester because of midterms and everything else going on. But the good thing is that we're still going um, slowly and steadily in this course, building our paper as we go. And if I can ask you for just one thing to do in this course is don't check in with others and what they're doing. Every single instructor who teaches English 204 has their own approach to the subject and their approach to the material. And you cannot compare classes. We have the same end result, we have the same objectives in the course, and we all meet all of our objectives, but we all do things very differently. And you're gonna get there. So it's not that, if you feel that others are doing something very different from what you're doing, it doesn't matter, because we're all gonna meet the same course objectives and course learning outcomes. So with that, I'm going to begin with what we have to do for this week. So this week, the assignment builds on what we did in the previous week. In the previous week, what we did was we went and we found sources. Okay. We rewrote, we finalized our RQs, our research questions, and then we answered these research questions in tentative thesis statements, and we listed them first before we went and tried to find some sources to support whatever we're talking about. So we found three sources or four sources in some instances that support the thesis statement and providing information about the topic, or maybe information about the different parts of the thesis statement. We also cited each source, including the name of the author, title of the article, date of publication, etc., etc. And these will be returned to you ASAP, so don't worry about it. You will have time to fix this and correct it before before you have to submit the second assignment, which builds on this assignment. And This week, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking last week's assignment and we're going to add to it. We're going to add information to it. But before we do this, what we're going to be doing is using the sources that we have found, and we will learn how to summarize, paraphrase, and quote. We call this assignment SPQ: summarize, paraphrase, and quote. So how do we do that? It's very simple. We go over the PowerPoint presentation I prepared for you, and we watch the YouTube video to learn how to do that while avoiding plagiarism, because it can be very easy to plagiarize. But the reason we learn not to plagiarize is because we need to credit other sources with the information that we found, and it makes us actually look good when we have cited other people. How does it make us look good? It means that we've done our homework. It means that we have sought the opinion of experts in the field. We've done our homework. We've looked at what other people are saying. We can support our ideas with something solid. And the problem with plagiarism is that it happens sometimes without us knowing. For example, we think that we've cited our sources, but we didn't. Like, for example, we state a sentence and then we just basically uh, put a parenthetical reference at the end. But which part of this sentence is entirely this parenthetical reference and which of it is ours is very difficult to determine. And this is why we're going to learn how to do that. The lovely thing about citation is that it actually started with Arabs. I don't know if you know this, but it actually started with Arabs. Arabs are the first who began something called referencing and crediting others with the source. In specific, it began with Islam. So Muslims were the first to start this reference thing and the quoting, uh, which is what we call nowadays al-an'ana. So when you are citing al-hadith al-nabawi sharif, you are saying who this was copied off of, an, right? So naqlan an, uh, Flan who copied it from this other person, who copied it from this other person, who copied it from this other person. And sometimes the source is ambiguous. So it's credible, and they actually tell you that the source is credible. So we trust the source. And sometimes they tell you, you know what, we're not sure of the credibility of the source. So it is not necessarily that clear whether this is true or false. Uh, and they actually tell you this information, which is amazing. So we are the people who started this. Arabs did, and I'm not sure where it came from or why they did that, but this is how they started it. Now we have to keep in mind that the first people who actually started writing down al-Hadith al-Nabawi Sharif were the uh, Furs, right? So it was actually them who decided to pen it down and write it, because it was easier for them to study it uh, in writing than it was just listening to it, because it's in a different language than theirs. They have to learn Arabic, the language of the Quran, but it was much more difficult to just because Arabs used to study the texts by just listening to them and memorizing them from the first round or the second round, and they actually took pride in being able to do that. Anyway, so after this short piece of information on where we started the citation, or this um, uh, tradition of citing our sources, what we're going to be doing this semester, this session is, I'm sorry, I was a little bit distracted. I have a new kitty, so I thought he was going to jump on me right now as I'm talking to you. Okay, so what we're let's get back um, to this. So what we're going to be doing is going over this. The reason why this is in a PowerPoint and not in a video is because it's too long. And I know that you can go through it faster than me explaining it. So this is why it's kept in a PowerPoint. And then I try over here in a video to show you how we do I don't, it's not my video, it's somebody else's video, but I think it's a very good, even though her voice is a little bit boring or monotonous, she does a good job showing you how to summarize, how to paraphrase, and how to quote correctly. And then what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going over the documented articles from last week's assignment. So this part you've already done. And we're going to be summarizing each article in 4 to 5 sentences, not lines, sentences. There is a difference. A line begins here, for example, with this and ends with down. However, the sentence begins with this and ends with easier. So this is the difference between a sentence and a line. Okay, so here we're going to be summarizing using 4 to 5 sentences. So you say in his article or in her article or in their article, and you give the title of the article. So I use here the art of Ba. Shaun the Sheep stated that blah, 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 blah. Okay. So you just summarize the gist of the article, what the article talks about in general. Then you're going to be, so you put a bullet point, you summarize, or you can put summary underneath the citation. So if you've cited, underneath it immediately you summarize, and then, or you leave a space and summarize, and then you leave a short, like one space, and then paraphrase 2 to 3 notable points in the article that you think you might use in your paper. I know you don't have the Wadsworth handbook, and this is why I added. I will actually add it to you later on this evening. I will photocopy it for you because I checked with the library and it seems that they do not have an e-copy for you, even though I had requested it. So I will make sure I photocopy these pages and put it for you up here. And after you're done with the summary and paraphrase, what I would want you to do is, you're not going to be quoting per se, but if you can go over how we quote. So how do we quote? It's in the video. We quote by putting something in quotation marks, but putting it in quotation marks is not enough. Putting it in quotation marks does not absolve you of having to cite it. You still have to cite it. You still have to say, for example, Lillis argues or argued that. So the difference between argues and argued is that if you're using MLA, you use the simple present tense, which is argues. If you're using APA, you use the past tense, which is argued. In this case, we're going to be using APA, so you will use the past tense of the verb. Okay, so Lillis argued, comma, open quotation marks, and then you put the quote. And then when you have a quote, you have to have a page number. So the quotation would be the end citation would be just the page number, P dot, and then the number. And don't forget that after stating the last name of the author within the sentence, if you're doing a narrative citation, so it's within the sentence, you put the last name and then you follow it by the year of the publication of the article. Okay, so this is an end citation here, parenthetical citation, and this is a narrative citation, which is within the text. So Alexander 2018 argued that this and that. Okay, over here I put grading criteria, but the reason I put this is not really a grading criteria per se. This is something just to remind you to follow instructions to a T. Oh, it seems that I have something in the chat. I got a kitten? No, my daughter got a kitten. And we thought we got a kitten. He was this big last week, and now he like tripled in size in just 1 week. Lynn, are you saying you have the Wadsworth? I can send some pages on the group. That is so nice of you. Thank you so much. But what I will do is I will scan it and just save it here for all of you to use. Also, I sent you the other day this, and I put it over here. It's the APA's 7th edition referencing system. So instead of using OWL Purdue, which is lovely, I love OWL Purdue, but this is all here in a PDF. And my suggestion is save it for later, like save it for other courses as well. This is an updated one. It's for the 7th edition of APA, which came out in 2020. And so certain websites might not be updated. They're using the 6th edition instead. This one is the 7th edition referencing system. I got it from a friend who works in Hong Kong, and so he said that this is what they've compiled, and I went over it, and it looks very easy to follow and lovely. It has all the information in there, makes it easier for you instead of going through the pages in the APA handbook, which you have over here, of course, at the beginning. Where is it? Oops. Okay. Apparently not. I thought I had it over here, but this will do. This will do. This will be enough. By the way, no, not every year. The last one, it took them something like 10 years to update, or 8 years or 10 years. They sometimes do some additions, like additions. MLA adds certain things every year. They update themselves a little bit, especially if there's like something revolutionary that happened in the world, like for example, with the rise of the internet and the availability of articles in journals that are no longer in print. At one point, you had to indicate whether it was in print or online, but nowadays with the updates to the data systems around the world, we are no longer required to put in print, for example. Nowadays, also APA has discovered, like for example, at first they used to say you have to list every single author in who has worked on the article, but like for example, my professor, my advisor, just submitted an article for publication that has 1,300 authors. So 1,300 authors participated in the writing of this article. It's a very important science piece. And you can't list 1,300 authors in your paper the first time. So what you do is APA now says what you can do is you can put the first author and you can put et al. So yeah, it's not certain. Sometimes they do like an addenda. They update it. They have like an appendix of updates or a reprint of something. But the last APA handbook took them many years to update, which was fine. It was still working. Majd is asking, Professor, everyone should submit his own paraphrase, summary, and quotation, or is it group work? So as I've indicated last week, it is a group work, so only one person is submitting, right? Where is it? No, here. So one student per group. And since this is a build on the previous assignment, it's going to also be a group work. And after that, we have the literature review, which is also built on this assignment. So what I'm doing is I'm taking you step by step through the literature review so it becomes easier for you. So as you are, as you are preparing for the literature review, you're doing these smaller chunks of assignments or pieces of assignments that you're completing together. So it is just a group effort. However, having said that, if you feel the need to add, or if you come across additional articles, right now what we're doing is sampling, right? So I'm teaching you how to write a literature review. I'm teaching you how to create a literature review, and this is how we do it. And so we're using the smallest number of articles that we can write a literature review on. But this is by all means not typical of a literature review. So it's, if you feel that you need to add more articles, go ahead and add more articles. This is what I'm trying to say. Having said that, so I will talk more about this when it's time to talk about the literature review, but I just mentioned something that literature review is larger than just 3 articles for sure, and we're just sampling. So how long is a literature review, or how many articles does a literature review include? I wrote a literature review for publication once, and it contained 50 articles, but it was a small literature review. So 50 articles is considered a small number of articles for a literature review. I just finished writing a few months ago another literature review that was much more extensive, and it included 198 entries. Part of the 198 entries were 35 books, which means that, I've read everything, like the 198 entries. I had to read every single article and summarize it and make sure, I understand what the points are and what the arguments are. And then I, looked at the data from all the different sources and was able to come up with a literature review. And the literature review was around 40 pages. Okay, so for 40 pages that include citations from 198 entries. This is how big literature reviews are usually, or they can be much smaller. Like, for example, if you're writing a science article, you can have 10 sources or 8 sources or 20 sources. If you're writing something a little bit bigger, you can have 40, 50, 60, 70, 70 to 80 sources is considered to be a comprehensive literature review. But of course, you're undergrads, you're writing your first official research paper in a sense. So we're just sampling. So we're going to do just 3 articles. Okay. Other questions or comments?
Professor?
Yes?
What did you say we should do after the paraphrasing, like the quotation part? What should we do in it?
I don't mention over here anything about quotes, because all I want you to do is summarize and paraphrase, but I want you to be aware of how to quote. Okay, later on in your paper, if you decide to insert a quotation, you need to know how to do it. So if you want to do something extra for your assignment, what you can do is add a quote. And so you introduce the quote. For example, you say in their article, and put the title, or for example, Alexander 2018 argued that this, and that. Oh, Lynn, yeah, in your case, and only in your case, because you're working on a literary topic, you have to have quotes, right? And I feel really bad for forcing you to use APA, because you're supposed to use MLA, especially if you're writing something about something in literature. But it's a chance for you to learn APA as well. Yes, you have to insert quotes. Yeah, I'm sorry about that, but it's a chance for you to learn APA. Because it's also somehow a cross, because you're 2 people who come from 2 different disciplines, and of course psychology majors always use APA. It stands for American Psychological Association. So how do you integrate source material into your writing? Let me show you. I have something stuck over here on my wall that I'm going to show you. I don't know if it's gonna show to you correctly or maybe backwards. Let me check my camera. Oops. Okay, I'm gonna stop mirroring my video. Okay, can you read this correctly? Or is it backwards?
No, we can read it correct.
Okay, let me stop sharing for a second and show it to you. So this is how we integrate source material into our writing. Instead of saying just all the time argues or argue or state, you can say acknowledge, admit, affirm, believe, claim, comment, or commented, concluded, concurred, disclosed, explained, find, illustrate, or found, illustrated, contended, implied, indicated, insisted, noted, observed, predicted, proposed, report, speculate, suggest, summarize, and warn. I have it stuck on the wall next to me because I always refer to it, especially when I'm writing. However, having said that, this is mostly used in social sciences. It's not used in every single discipline. They're not the same throughout. And the reason I'm saying this is because you have to familiarize yourself with your own discipline's discourse. Discourse is the language that's used to discuss things in your field. Even within the field, there are subspecialties, and each specialty uses its own words. So if you're using the word theorize, in humanities, it means one thing. In social sciences, it means another thing. In the sciences, it means another thing. In mathematics, it means another thing. So you have to be careful, and you have to pay attention to how words and verbs are used within your discipline. So as you are reading the papers from your field, as you're reading the papers that your research is yielding, and we're talking here about academic papers, we're not talking about popular sources, we're not talking about National Geographic articles, we're not talking about an article that you pulled off the internet that discusses a research study and reports on it and says, oh, a recent study done by Oxford shows it's this and that. We're talking about real research. We're talking about the research that you get from your database, from the library's databases, from Google Scholar, that link you to journals, because of course, it's just a search engine. So look at the language that is being used in order to state certain ideas. Okay, what I showed you right now is a beautiful list, but it's mostly used in the social sciences. In natural sciences, for example, if you're writing a paper in purely biology, like, you cannot say, for example, um, argues in the same meaning as you would use it in the social sciences. In the social sciences, or even in humanities, if we say presumes, the author presumes or presumed, what are we trying to say here? We're trying to say that we disagree with the author, or the author is unsure, or we are not sure of what the author is saying. So this uncertainty, instead of saying, I do not trust what the author is saying, you say, the author presumes. Okay? Please, 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 especially in the social sciences, if you're right, or even in humanities, don't use words such as the author thinks. You don't know what the author thinks. Don't use words such as the author feels, because you don't know what the author feels. If the author says, I feel, right? I feel that, which is not almost never present in an academic article. You can say that the author states that she feels this and that. Okay, you cannot you cannot be sure of what the author is thinking or what the author is feeling. And please, please, please avoid abstract nouns like something or things or people. Please don't use words like people or things or stuff or any of that. Instead of people, you can say you should be more specific, like elementary educators, AB students, Lebanese citizens of various ages or various age groups. Be specific. Who are you talking about? The easy way out is to use abstract nouns. Give it a little bit more thought and effort in stating or in articulating um, who you're talking about or what you're trying to say. Don't use etc. It annoys me because you can list 3 or 4 things. You don't have to put etc. You can say other things as well. Okay, so those are like little details that strengthen your writing without you even noticing that your writing is becoming stronger, right? And I noticed something that students always do as they're writing. They say, in addition to that. This is such a big filler. In addition is enough. You don't have to say in addition to that. It sounds very much like Arabic. زيادة على هيك. In addition, like why the to that, right? You don't need fillers. And please don't worry about the length of your article. Not article. Don't worry about the length of any of your submissions, especially the final paper. Don't ask how long your final paper should be, because you would be surprised at the end of the semester to see how much you've written, especially because everything that you write in this course is recyclable. So whatever you have written in the last week's assignment is going to be used in this week's assignment, and it's going to be used in the literature review. It's going to be used in the final paper, especially with the references. Anything you reference is going to be there, right? Okay, so any questions, concerns, reactions, presumptions, opinions, feelings, thoughts?
Professor?
Yes, Bashir.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, the source I chose supported the topic, but it wasn't specific enough, regarding the group and then the age group and the nationality. Should I consider changing the thesis, or is it early?
Don't change the thesis based on one source that you have found. What you can do with this source is you can always use it for background information or to back up an argument later on, somehow, some way. If you feel that it is related to the topic, even though that the audience or the participants in the study are a different group, you can always use something from it.
Yeah, it supports it well.
خلاص.
And I'm still searching in case I find something better.
Good. Great.
And can we do the survey to gather like local data?
Yes, usually you would need an IRB approval, and you need to become aware of what an IRB is. We'll talk more about this in a different session, but just to briefly describe, an IRB is the internal review board for AUB that makes sure that our research is ethical, that our research does not violate any rights for any human, okay? And even though you're not going to be publishing your article, if you're going to be sending out surveys and stuff, as students, sometimes you might seek a waiver from IRB. Given how long our AUB IRB takes to give you consent, we're not going to be doing this. And but it's just in a sense, we're just practicing here. So we're practicing how to do research. So if you have a survey, you want to send it out, just make sure that how are you sending this out, and make sure that you detail this information in your paper. So who are the participants? How did you find them? How did you select them? How did you contact them? How did you introduce them to the study? And make sure you also tell them that they have the right to withdraw from the survey at any point they want, okay? Because you're just asking them general questions. Sometimes we presume that the risk for partaking or participating in a research is minimal. No harm is going to be done if you ask them questions. And sometimes you might think that, it's nothing more than the risks of taking or partaking in the study are no more than daily risks occurred. Sometimes we might erroneously presume this, but the problem is that there are hidden risks that we might not be aware of. Like, we might ask a question that might trigger people in the wrong way. It might trigger participants' anxieties, for example. It might trigger participants' fears, or it might remind them of something that they don't want to be reminded of. So this is something that we have to be cautious and aware of. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So if anything, you can show me the survey before you send it out, and you tell me who you're going to be sending it out to, who are the participants, how will you contact them, etc. And this will make it into your paper as well. So when you talk about your survey, you mention these details. This is called your method, the methodology of how you collected this information. Other questions?
Professor?
Yes.
I just wanted to ask, do we have to use all the articles we got now? Or like, let's say if later on we find that no, khalas, we don't need to, we can just not use it.
Yes, this is a possibility that you might find, you know what, this article is not as good as I thought it was, and so I'm not going to include it. It's fine. But having said that, why waste your time trying to find additional articles? يعني من الأول, you know, let's try to find the articles that we will use so that we can save ourselves the hassle of having to find articles in the future. Okay?
Yeah, but it's like we found articles and no, it has so much different info, but basically the whole general part of it is the same maybe for two articles, let's say. But
Great.
like there are
That would
specific
make
informations.
that would make an
Sorry.
excellent article for a literature review if they're speaking about
okay.
the same information. So for the literature review, it's going to be important because it's supporting one claim or two claims or whatever, right? So it's actually a good thing.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Also,
yeah.
sorry, do we have to include in-text citations in the summary or the paraphrase, or just Malay without them?
No, you don't include summary in your in-text citation. If you're summarizing, you have to put it at the beginning. In their article, the authors, so you include it once. In the paraphrasing, you know what? Whatever you do now will save you time later. So if you do an in-text citation right now, you don't have to insert it later. You can just copy the whole thing and throw it in your literature review.
Okay.
يعني كل شيء بتعملوه هلا بتشيلوه من قدامكم.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Other questions? No?
Yes, Professor, I have a question.
Yes.
So one of the sources that me and Noor are working on entail a podcast.
Okay.
And we were just wondering if we could paraphrase a podcast or use it.
Yes. Would it be a wise thing to use it right now or later on in the paper? To stay on the safe side, maybe use something that they refer to in the podcast, like if they refer to a source or if they refer to a study, go find that study and use it instead. And the reason I'm telling you this is because when we talk about literature review, when we're reviewing the literature, we have to review peer-reviewed published empirical studies or researches or whatever, or books in your case, rather than any other digital source. Okay, it might be problematic for you later on, so to save you the hassle, find and replace this source, or keep the source for later on, but replace it for this assignment with something that is in print. Does that make sense?
Yes, Professor, it does. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, other questions? And by the way, Noor and Len, I'm trying to save you the hassle because it might be problematic for you later on. Personally, it's not like it's going to make a difference, but when you start to write the literature review, it might be problematic. Yeah, somebody was about to speak and I interrupted you.
Me again, I'm sorry.
Yeah, right.
We have an article that's like maybe 60 pages. If I just want to use, let's say, like 7 or 5 pages from those, should I just include those 5 pages in the citation? Or do I have to summarize the whole article as there?
Oh, okay. So when it comes to the summary, does it have an abstract?
Yeah, I think so. It has an introduction. I don't know if.
No, an introduction is different from an abstract. If it has an abstract, great. Use that abstract to extract a summary. You cannot use 7 pages for, well, you can use whatever you want from the article. I'm presuming 60 pages includes a lot of results and data and analysis of results and things like that, which might be
Yeah.
in a sense, or maybe tables and graphs and things like that. This is
It
what I'm
does.
presuming. So yeah, you use whatever you want from it for sure, but you can't just like cite only 7. Like you can, oh you mean like summarize certain parts, and for the summary it has to be a summary of the entire article. So if there is an abstract, great. If there is no abstract, then you jump to the conclusion. The conclusion usually sums up the article, right?
Okay.
So it tells you what the article is about. What is the first thing that you read usually when you read an article?
The abstract, but this one doesn't
Abstract.
have one.
If it doesn't have one, then what is the second best thing to read?
Okay,
You
the
know?
conclusion, yeah.
The conclusion, yeah. The conclusion is the second best thing to read. Okay.
Doctor, I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Since Lynn and I are doing about Dead Poets Society, which is a film and it's also a written book, should we summarize the book itself?
Why do you want to use the book as part of the literature?
No,
The
just asking if
literature
I have
is
to.
different from the primary source. Your primary
Okay.
source is the book and the movie, right?
Yes.
But the literature is whatever has discussed it.
Okay. Okay,
So
thank you.
it's like, for example, an article that was written on a critique of the book or a book review or something like that. Okay. All right. If there are no more questions, I'm going to stop the recording.